What's going on? What's going on, everybody? What's going on, everybody? Uh, welcome to the podcast. Welcome to the podcast. Glad to have everybody back. You know, this is a You Ain't Finna Give It To Me Like That podcast. And I got my two co hosts with me. I got with me Sir Lucius, aka Maurice, and I got with me Erica. Just happy Halloween for everybody. She has the pumpkin emoji. So definitely happy Halloween, everybody who celebrated. Some of these costumes are crazy, and some of these costumes were a little bit too much. But hopefully, everybody had a safe Halloween. What's going on, you guys? Welcome to the podcast. How you guys feeling tonight, Erica, Maurice?
I'm feeling okay. Hey everybody.
What's going on, man? I'm feeling good, feeling good. Just got off the gig.
All right. Yeah, likewise. Had a pretty busy day today, but I'm feeling better, especially better than yesterday. But good to go. Today we're going to be talking about a little bit of history with the twist, if you will, a little bit of Black history, but there's also a bit of horror to the history, and we want to kind of give just a background story. Today we'll do a reading, give some commentary. You may get, maybe a part two on this in the future. But today we just kind of want to bring awareness and kind of go with the theme of the holiday. So today we'll talk about the haunting of Lake Lanier and the Black City buried underneath it, called Oscarville. That's what's in the title of the chat. Also, in the description, you guys will see the links to a few sources there. Also, I'll post the main one that we'll be talking about today in the chat as well. So make sure you guys hit that like button and subscribe, and we'll get started with the reading. So here we go. This is provided by News One. It's called The Haunting of Lake Lanier and the Black City Buried Underneath, an American horror story filled with terror, death, genocide, and black ghosts. And this is written by Bilal G. Morris. It was published on August 21st, 2021. All right, some photos here. So there's a city buried under Lake Lanier, Georgia's biggest lake, and submerged with it is a secret, an American horror story filled with terror, death, genocide, and ghosts. If you spend any time in or around Atlanta, you've heard tales of Lake Lanier. There are the eerie accounts of fishermen seeing ghostly kayaks floating on the water, or women with no hands roaming the Jerry D. Jackson Bridge. Every so often, someone loses their life at the lake and leaves behind stories of good swimmers being snatched underwater, unexplainable boating accidents, or vehicles crashing in the lake without a cause. Many folks who live close by will tell you straight up, don't go to Lake Lanier. And its death toll certainly validates their point. There have been well over 500 deaths since the lake's inception and more than 200 since 1994. Whether the lake is cursed or not is entirely up to you, but one thing's for certain, its horrifying past adds a much needed perspective to understanding its haunting present. So we gotta go back to the beginning. In the beginning, Lake Lanier is a massive 57.92 square mile reservoir that was established in 1956 with the completion of the Buford Dam. To this day, it helps control flooding along the Chattahoochee River, as well as provide water and power to residents near Atlanta. However, to get a clearer picture of how and why this behemoth of a lake exists, we'll need to go back 45 years before its creation to 1912 in the small African American town of Oscarville. Settled along the Chattahoochee waters, Oscarville was home to roughly 1,100 black folks, most of whom were freed after fighting in the American Civil War. Many worked as hands in the cotton fields or performed odd jobs for white residents in the surrounding neighborhoods. They managed to make a decent living for themselves, creating a healthy community with churches, schools, and small businesses. Still on edge from the Atlanta race riots in 1906, many locals feared more violence could erupt at any time. Black American sociologist and author W.E.B. Du Bois penned an emotional essay called A Litany of Atlanta, which was printed in local newspapers and captured the sheer pain, fear, and terror Black people felt in the South during this time. Quote, "Forgive us, the Lord, we know not what we say." End quote. Quote, "Bewildered we are, impassion tossed, mad with the madness of a mob that mocked and murdered people, straining at the arm post of thy throne. We raise our shackled hands and charge thee, God, by the bones of our stolen fathers, by the tears of our dead mothers, by the very blood of thy crucified Christ. What meaneth this? Tell us the plan. Give us the sign." End quote. These are quotes from W.E.B. Du Bois' A Litany of Atlanta. Make sure you go read that. Take a look at that. It refers to what happened in Oscarville. It was clear that in the early 1900s, blacks in Atlanta lived in constant fear of violence. For the small town of Oscarville, that fear would turn into brutal reality. Forsyth County racial conflict. On September 5th, 1912, a 22-year-old white woman named Ellen Grice claimed two black men tried to rape her, but were unsuccessful because they were scared away by her mother. The Forsyth County Sheriff arrested five black men for the alleged assault. News of the attack and arrest caused quite a stir in the surrounding black communities. A vocal black preacher named Grant Smith appealed to the sheriff to release the men. He claimed there wasn't much evidence to hold all five men accountable for assault, and also suggested that one of the men could have already been in a consensual relationship with Grace. Many whites were outraged by Smith's allegation, and an angry mob beat and horsewhipped the preacher on the steps of the courthouse, almost taking his life. A week later, on September 12th, 1912, an 18-year-old white woman named May Crow was raped and beaten in the Big Creek community of County, Georgia. The next morning, Crow's body was found half naked, bloody, and hidden under a pile of leaves. Her skull had been bludgeoned with a stone, but she was alive and barely breathing. Searchers would allegedly find a small pocket mirror at the scene of a crime that was said to belong to Ernest Knox, a 16-year-old black boy from Cumming, Georgia. Knox was arrested at his home, then subjected to a mock lynching, which led to his coerced confession for the attack on Crow. As word spread of the attack on Crow and the confession by Knox, whites became increasingly angry. It wasn't long before a lynch mob formed in front of the jailhouse where Knox was being detained. Officers had to sneak Knox out the back door late that evening just to keep him from being hanged. He was taken to a jail in Atlanta for his protection, but would soon stand trial for the attack. The next day, four additional men, Oscar Daniel, Rob Edwards, Jane Daniel, and Ed Collin, were arrested and taken into custody, suspected to be the accomplices of the 16-year-old, all of them black. Soon, another angry mob of more than 2,000 whites had stormed the county jail, gaining access to the cells. They shot and killed Rob Edwards, dragged his body from the jailhouse, and hung him from a telephone pole in the town square. Ernest Knox and Oscar Daniel were both found guilty of the rape of May Crow. They were sentenced to death by hanging, even though it was illegal by state law at that time. 8,000 whites congregated in the town square coming to watch two teenage boys publicly hanged for an alleged crime they never truly had the opportunity to fight. It was after this hanging that the terror would begin to spread, as a white group of terrorists known as the Night Riders would make it their mission to run every black person they came across out of town. Oscarville would end up being one of their main targets. And over a short period of just a few years, 98% of its black residents would end up either leaving their homes or being murdered for refusal to move. Black property deeds found their ways into the hands of white neighbors without any bill of sale or transfer. This effectively allowed many whites to steal the land once owned by their black counterparts when they were driven out by the Night Riders. More than 1,100 blacks would lose their livelihood in little time. Once functioning African American town of Oscarville would be a ghost town. Over time, pieces of the land would be sold to the government, and by 1950, a plan to build Lake Lanier was in full effect. Soon, the entire town of Oscarville would be underwater, intentionally flooded in conjunction with the Beaufort Dam to support the growing demand for a water supply to the nearby cities. The resulting reservoir was named after Sidney Lanier, a poet and musician who was also a Confederate private. In the end, construction would destroy more than 50,000 acres of farmland and displace more than 250 families. It would also relocate 20 cemeteries and their corpses in what some may see as an attempt to erase the sins of its past. More pictures of the lake here. So, uh, Lake Lanier is Lake Lanier haunted? Question is maybe it's haunted by the culpability of genocide, terror, and a hatred for blacks that can't be ignored. It's interesting to note that the Forsyth County newspaper was created in 1908, but its records before 1917 are completely missing. Why? It's our duty as Americans to be honest with ourselves about the past. Atlanta and the surrounding areas have had a deep rooted history of inflicting terror onto the black community. Unfortunately, this story, like so many, has been relatively hidden, stolen away, and drowned beneath a lake filled with pain and suffering. We may not have facts, but we do have folklore. Stories like these are passed down through generations as a means to keep us safe. Some cultural rules black folks may not understand, but they sure do follow, like don't go to Lake Lanier. Before we go into the interview with the therapist and psychology grad student Sheena McLaughlin, what are you guys' thoughts on this story of what's happened with Forsyth County, Oscarville, and now the area currently known as Lake Lanier?
Um, I mean, it's unfortunate. This is it's one of those things where I'm not surprised because throughout that period, that Jim Crow era, the Reconstruction era, all of that is pretty much every major city in the U.S., north or south, had some sort of, what I'm saying, issues where it was like a race riot, white folks like blatantly attacking black folks for whatever reason, and it was a lot of times that excuse was given. Something happened to a little white girl or a white lady, and all hell broke loose. Nobody ever knows if these stories are true. And to be honest, with all these angry mobs, I seriously doubt that the stories are true. I just feel like it's just unfortunate, that type of thing. As far as the lake is concerned, personally, I'm not really into the ghostly thing, so I don't personally think that it's haunted. I don't think there's any such thing, but I will say this: knowing what I know and understanding how they how they started the lake and what's actually under the lake, I can see why there's so many accidents and so many people losing their lives. I don't think there's anything supernatural. I mean, that's I guess that's subjective to anybody else, but me personally, I don't think it's anything supernatural. I just think it's they didn't do a good job at cleaning up what was under the lake, and it's a lot more shallow than you think with all of that stuff that's under that water. So it's easily for a boat or somebody who doesn't know or understand to go into certain parts of it to possibly hit something like a tall tree stump, which is a lot of those out there because there was a lot of forest land out there too. For them to hit a tall tree stump or something and probably score the side or underside of a boat, and a boat could sink or hit you hard enough where if you're standing up on a boat, you'll fly over if you don't have a life jacket on. So I can see that happening a lot, but that's just my take on that portion of it or that part of it.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Erica, what are your thoughts about the tale of Oscarville and Lake Lanier in Forsyth County? Uh, Erica, are you there? Maurice, are you there?
Yeah, I'm still here, bro.
Okay, maybe she stepped away. Let me ask you, um, as someone who visited Lake Lanier, what was your experience while you were on the lake?
Well, I'll tell you one thing. I'll be honest. Before I went to the lake, I didn't know about Oscarville and what happened on that lake. I mean, happened before the lake existed. I had no clue. I was invited out to a boat party by a cousin of mine who owns a boat who has it on Lake Lanier. And, we went out there and we had a good time. I thought it was pretty cool. I went out there at nighttime and, we were on this boat. We went out in the middle of the lake and, we had a good time. I'll say this. I think that if I would have known to the extent of what I know now about what happened, um, I don't think that would have stopped me from going on the lake. I think that would have made me more conscious about my surroundings and everybody that was around me, if anything. But I don't think it would have stopped me from going per se. I just think I probably would have had a different perspective of being out there had I known that that had happened.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Yeah, it's definitely something that isn't, well known. At least I didn't know about it until recent. And I was shocked to hear the story of, Oscarville and what happened, and how those people were kind of forced to move out of their homes, move out of their neighborhood, sell their properties for nothing because they didn't really get like a bill of sale. So it was really like disappointing to hear. But I am glad that they were able to, give the story some light. And then to find that not only is this lake, there today, but it's also being used as a resource for water for nearby communities, which is kind of, you know, the last thing you want to hear, if you live nearby, is that your water supply, if it is, coming from the Lake Lanier, has a dark, dark past, you know. So I found it very interesting. Erica, are you back with us? I wanted to know your input on the story. She may have stepped away. Um,
Uh,
let me go back into this interview here. We'll give you a quick here. So this interview, um, there was a therapist and psychology grad student, Sheena McLaughlin, who grew up in Decatur in the 80s. She recalls many stories about Lake Lanier growing up and folklore of a black city under the lake. Uh, Question: growing up in Decatur, did you ever hear any stories about Lake Lanier? Her answer: for sure. Amongst the various tales that we would hear, one of the prominent ones was Lake Lanier. From a younger age, I recalled there would be jokes and hints that Lake Lanier was a dangerous place and that you might visit but don't go into the water. As I got older, I got a little bit more detail behind the stories, and it became a lot more of a folk tale. They would speak about the town underneath, how it was haunted, the black folks buried underneath the water would snatch you under. We would hear stories of graves and bodies that were never removed when they built a man-made body of water over black spirits. Question: do you believe that Lake Lanier is haunted? And her answer is absolutely. Question: have you ever been to Lake Lanier yourself? Her answer: oh, yes, many times. Growing up, we would do boat trips every so often, but as I got older and learned more about the lake, I couldn't bring myself back to that place. I haven't been in 15 years. Like Cena, many folks in the South are starting to learn the truth about Lake Lanier. No longer folklore, but not quite fact. History begins to bleed into the present as we get closer and closer to the truths of the past. Sadly, stories like these from the 1900s are hidden all over the South. I definitely agree with that. If you dig a little bit deeper into your state, you'll find that the further back you go into history, there are a lot of tales, especially, about black communities that, are kind of hidden and hush hush and that weren't necessarily talked about. Black communities were destroyed before having a real chance to thrive. Communities like Oscarville are just the tip of the iceberg in understanding the terror Southern black folks faced in the periods after the American Civil War. So this is the end of the article here. Again, you can go to newsone.com. I did put the link in the chat there for those who are listening or who review the video afterwards. So this here again is the haunting of Lake Lanier and the Black City buried underneath. I did put some other sources at the bottom in the description. Definitely take a look at those. I want to see if Erica came back. Erica, are you with us?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. Um, so wanted to know what was your take on, the history of Lake Lanier, Forsyth County, and the history of Oscarville. What was your take on hearing the story?
I think it's something that we don't really talk about much, unfortunately. And so people probably is on that lake a lot and don't know the real history behind it or what actually lurks beneath it. So it's definitely something that needs to get out there. Unfortunately, what happened to Oscarville is, no different than what's happened to many black towns, back during Jim Crow era or whenever this happened, basically. And so it's just more history that I think the country likes to kind of wash away in a sense. In this case, they did it literally because it was a forced lake. And so, yeah, it's just an unfortunate situation.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Yeah, it definitely is. It's, again, like it's one of those things that, maybe some of the locals are familiar with, but a lot of people, definitely haven't heard of such things. Here's another article we'll go over. And this here starts with the 11 Alive. Again, I'll put this link in the chat. This is a relative of Oscarville resident who shares their history behind the city underneath Lake Lanier. Let me share this, you guys to see. All right. All right. There we go. Bring this up a little bit. And I posted the link in the chat. You guys should be able to grab that if you want it. So we'll read this one. I also want to say that they attempted to make a movie out of this particular tale, and that's something that you know I would have loved to see, but they have to make sure they do it right and do it justice. But this is another article here again on Living Alive. We'll read this one. It says, let me bring this one up a bit. But Gainesville, Georgia. Lake Lanier is a Georgia landmark, but before it became part of the state's landscape, there was the town of Oscarville. It was formed in the late 1800s during the Reconstruction era. Georgia history teacher Lisa Crosby said Oscarville was a thriving black community full of carpenters, blacksmiths, and bricklayers, with farming as the top trade. Quote, they had a miraculous farming growth here while the rest of the state was really struggling, she said. This was the case until 1912, when May Crow, a 19-year-old white woman, was found dead in the woods near Oscarville, presumably after being raped. Quote, typically, the answer to white girls being raped was to go to black communities and start blaming people, Crosby said. When nightfall came and terror began to reign over Oscarville, Crosby said mobs came together called Night Riders and they drove the black community out. Filmmaker Bob Mackey, who is capturing these horrendous nights in an upcoming television series, said the night turned deadly. Quote, they were wakened up by fires outside, firebombs thrown in the church, he said. Quote, the church was the centerfold of the community, so anytime something happened, guess where everyone would go? To the church, he said. Quote, well, they attacked the church where everyone was resting for a sense of protection. After the destruction in the late 1950s, the Buford Dam was built, and Lake Lanier was formed, covering up Oscarville and swallowing most of its history. Many people died during this attack trying to get to Gainesville. George Rucker, a direct descendant who has traced his lineage 4 generations back to Oscarville, told the story of his great grandfather, Bird Oliver, and how their entire family was forced off their land. When the Night Riders came through, they had to leave everything, he said. The main thing they left was property, and my grandfather had 100 acres. Rucker said his family headed for the Chattahoochee River with the angry mob behind them. He said when the mob got to the bridge where they were, they had two options. They either had to swim or drown. Most of them didn't make it, he said. My grandfather is one of them that did make it. He lost some brothers and sisters. He said his mother would tell him whenever Oliver recalled the nights, he just sat and cried. His relatives who survived settled in Gainesville. Rucker said his great grandfather married his second wife, Beulah, and they built the Beulah Rucker House School, which still stands in Gainesville. Crosby said whites in the area took over the remaining properties. Oscarville farmers were specifically skilled in raising poultry, Crosby said, which set the pace for Gainesville eventually becoming the poultry capital of the world. Other movie makers are also sharing the story of Oscarville. Executive producers William Eric Bush Anderson, Cindy Coons Anderson, and Ali Astigo are working on a project about Lake Lanier. Quote, it's a super important story, and I think a lot of people want it to be told as well, Bush Anderson said, because there's another Black Wall Street before it was taken away, end quote. Their film, with Astigo as the lead actor, will have a horror and thriller spin to it. Quote, there's a big audience for horror. It's a different way to shine light on something that a lot of people deny to this day, end quote, Coons Anderson said. The filmmakers emphasize that their approach is not a gimmick, but a way to show and draw attention to the purpose. Quote, doing the movie the way we will be portraying it will be more of a wake-up call, and that's our goal, as Tigo said. They will continue to work on the film and they hope to release it in 2023. As for Lake Lanier now, many people believe it's haunted because of the high number of drownings that occur there. Officials say there's an entire town that includes structures and even forest areas that are forest areas with trees that are 60 feet tall. It makes it more challenging to navigate through the lake. They said someone can quickly become trapped in debris, causing them to drown. And there's the related articles there for 11 Alive. So again, a very horrifying tale, and definitely providing some history about what happened in Oscarville, and a little bit of Black history as well for you. So again, thanks you guys for allowing me to read this and everybody get their perspective. In closing, I know you guys have given your comments about the story. In closing, I'm sure there are more stories like this. What does finding stories like this teach us today? Most people, they never hear these stories. And when they do, they don't necessarily know how to react or know how to handle them. Erica, Maurice, what do you guys think would be the lessons that we need to learn from stories like this?
Um, honestly, I mean, at this point in 2023, me personally, in my heart of hearts, to me, it's clear as day the lesson that we need to learn. But you know, in the same breath, this is not. I understand that this is not the you know 1900s, 1800s. It's a new day. But at the end of the day, racism to a certain extent still does exist. And while it has not been a situation where it's so overt and as far as blatantly attacking people, it's become more covert and it's still just as dangerous. It's just I feel like we have to be diligent in understanding when when it's happening and paying attention to what's going on within society and certain things. But I'm also glad that times have changed to a point where it's definitely not that bad in the physical sense. Um, so I just think that what we can learn is honestly I guess the same things we can learn from Black Wall Street and other major cities and towns that existed back in these times when African Americans had our own way. I think that um, we owe it to ourselves to kind of lean on each other more and try to get back to having our own and not um, being so separate in a sense. Because I think that's one of the things that cause an issue now. And I know that subconsciously we are apprehensive about starting our own because you feel like that, oh, if you start your own or if you have your own, they're gonna find some way to tear it down. But I think just we just gotta persevere through this and fight for each other and do better for each other and build this community back up. That's my take on it. That's what I feel like we need to learn from this and other stories like this because this isn't the only one. Like I mentioned earlier, Black Wall Street. You got the riots of East St. Louis, St. Louis. There were riots pretty much in every major city in the country and other cities that we don't know about, just like Oscarville. Um, but I just think that we need to get back to us as a community, working with each other, and that's my take on it.
All right. All right. Erica, uh, what are your thoughts as far as lessons to learn from tales like this?
I think that the us versus them energy is kind of what causes a lot of what goes on in towns like this, where it's like you have, white people coming in and tearing down, black, spaces and everything that goes along with that. So, just coming from a spiritual standpoint, I think that if we were all to finally understand and truly recognize that we are truly all one, and I know that sounds like, my God, but we are all one. Just because we have different pigment on our skin doesn't make us different. We as humans make that difference. So I feel like if from a spiritual standpoint, we understand that we are all one and stop fighting against each other and having a us versus them and a segregation and all of that, that we know is just history repeating itself because it didn't work when we were segregated before. It's not going to work now. It's like I feel like a lot of this will go away. A lot of the racism will go away because we will no longer have a reason to be fighting amongst each other for something as, simple and as stupid as skin color. And so I think that's what this could teach us. And as long as we continue to push against each other and try to just band in our own little groups, basically, and just looking over the fence at others, like, y'all better not come over here because, we're us and y'all are them and y'all need to stay over there, history will continue to repeat itself. The reason why this shit keeps happening is because we aren't fully understanding and grasping the fact that we're supposed to all be working together. But it's too much, it's too much ego involved to where everyone thinks that we're all separate because of, skin tone or culture or what have you. I don't subscribe to any of that. And I feel like, again, just coming from a spiritual standpoint, if we could understand the implications behind us all doing everything separately, I think that we will be able to finally come together as one and cut all of that out, period.
Interesting, interesting. Interesting take. Interesting take. You both bring good point. Good point. I definitely think this story, like many others, continue to teach us lessons that unfortunately we still haven't learned. We still haven't learned to, get back to, trusting each other. And we've made so many things, cause us to not band together when we're supposed to. You know, when country cities like Oscarville were put together, there wasn't any, people trying to separate themselves from others because, certain things. Sure, they may have had their differences, but they all understood that living there prior to the horror that came was a peaceful, beneficial, plentiful life. And, you know, it was a place, a safe haven, if you will. And so when, those who see themselves as different come amongst us, the intent is to destroy. And I mean, that's something that's not only happened in history, but it's happened even today. It doesn't matter what the race is, it doesn't matter what the color is, it doesn't matter what the culture is, it doesn't matter what preferences we have. We always try to find some reason to keep us all divided. And that's working backwards. And unfortunately, for those of us who hope to see that day where, there's some, unification, even on a smaller level, we won't see it because we're so busy trying to separate ourselves from others. We're so busy trying to blame others. We're so busy trying to take out our pain and our hurt and our issues on others. And I think this story is like many others of people who, found a common goal and they stuck to it. And the only reason why it fell apart is because somebody saw themselves as different. Somebody saw themselves as lacking or not having instead of working together so that we all could eat, we all could benefit. So it's a constant lesson. It doesn't matter, what shade or what color, and what pair of rose-colored glasses we wear. It's all the same, and we'll continue to repeat this as you know human life continues to exist on this planet. It doesn't look like we're changing pace at all. That's, I feel like, is one of the lessons, one of the crucial lessons that we are learning from these stories. And all they continue to do is remind us of why the strongest species on the planet still, for some reason, can't get it together. As intelligent as we like to hear that we are, for some reason, we still can't get it together. Um, so that's our piece. That's our closing. I think this is a good, you know, short read, a little bit of history. Again, if you want more detailed history, definitely check the description. I put some other links there with some details as far as further reading you can do. Of course, all of these links have sources and further reading you can do. So definitely get down and get busy with it. Definitely get the actual story and really go step by step into this. And if you had in the comments, leave us another story, another tale that you feel like we should know that maybe a lot of people don't know. All that's going to do is continue to help us spread the word around and continue to educate. So, if that's everything, wish everybody a good night. And until next time, you ain't finna give it to us like that. Everybody have a good night.